Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services here this morning, we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Esainai El Harim Esainai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Esainai El Harim Esainai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. I lift up mine eyes unto the mountains, from whence cometh my help. Good morning, everyone. I'm Phyllis Levy, a dear family friend, along with my husband Michael of Cheryl and Jay's for almost 40 years. Our friendship started when our sons, Stephen and Rob, became very close buddies in elementary school. I'm also a member of Congregation Kolami and a Mashpia Ruchanit, a spiritual director, recently ordained in the Jewish renewal tradition. I am more than blessed to have our daughter, Cantor Lauren Goodlev of Beth David Reformed Congregation in Gladwin as my co-officiant today. We are both deeply honored that Cheryl asked us to be here to support the family through this time. And how appropriate that we should be celebrating Lil's life today, Mother's Day. Lil Kaplan was the quintessential mom, the 101-year-old matriarch of her large and growing mishpucha, Yiddish for clan. She was a true woman of valor, and I'll speak more about that later, as will members of her family. We are all here today to support her family. Her son Ronnie, his wife Jackie, and their family, Jacqueline, here with her boyfriend Raul, and her children Sam and Sydney, Justin and his wife Liz and their children Aiden and Kate, Joe and his wife Valencia and their children Joe and Roman, Jennifer and her husband Wayne and their children Jay and Jack, and my dear friend Lil's daughter Cheryl and her husband Jay and their family, Stephen and his wife Lindsay and their children Chase and Max, Jeffrey and his wife Holly and their children Georgia and James. Whew, Kinahara. God bless. And speaking of God, in the words of one of my colleagues, a wonderful haiku poet, why visit the sick, bury the dead, comfort mourners? We emulate God. It is truly a mitzvah, a really good act to be here today. Thank you all for coming. There's a time for everything. There's a time for everything, a time for all things under the sun. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter and a time to gather, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
In the rising of the sun, we remember. In the blowing of the wind, we remember. In the opening of buds, we remember. We remember. In the blueness of the sky, we remember. In the rustling of leaves, we remember. As the year starts and it ends, we remember. We remember. When we're weary and need strength, we remember. When we're lost and sick at heart, we remember. When we've joys we yearn to share, we remember. We remember. So long as we live, they too shall live. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. As we remember, as we remember, we remember.
Some words from Exodus. We rarely find the words to tell our love, and if we do, we say so many other things that wound and hurt that no one hears our loving words. And all the things we should have said rise up to haunt us on that day when nothing can be said to one who can no longer hear. We thank you for the moments of understanding that make this world go on. We thank you for words that heal, words that teach and soothe, words that others take into their hearts. We have spoken such words too, but not as often as we would. Help us to speak with love and skill. Let us be your messengers in truth. Let us do the things we have to do while there is still time to do them. Let us say the things we have to say whilst there is still time to say them.
I'll continue now singing the words of Psalm 23, first in Hebrew, and then we'll join together, led by my mom, in the words in English. They sing, they read about the guiding words of a shepherd as we all seek a bit of comfort, a bit of guidance for that strength that we need in taking those steps that we all need finding our way in this path in this world. Perhaps we need that holding hands, taking those steps in this world that we might not know how to take in Lil's absence. Adonai roi lo echsar bino desheya bitseni al mei menuchot al mei menuchot yinach aleini nafshi yeshovev yeshovev yancheni v'magelei tzedek yancheni b'magelei tzedek leman shemo gam ki eilech begetz hamavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taroch lefanai lefanai shulchan neged zorerai dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov v'chesed yedefuni kol yemei chayai kol yemei chayai v'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamin Adonai roi lo echsar Adonai roi lo echsar.
Please join me, if you will, in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So let's start at the beginning. Lil was born, Lillian Ray Shookman, on April 13th, 1922, in Philadelphia, to Jenny and Nate Shookman, a homemaker and a factory worker who were first-generation Americans, their parents having left Europe decades before. Along with her younger sister, she grew up in a modest home in the Strawberry Mansion area. She graduated high school in 1940, and her adult life began one fateful day around that time when, at age 18, she went on a blind date with a very handsome young man, Marty Kaplan. She was hooked at first sight. Her words then to a dear friend were, "I'm going to marry that man." And she did. They married the next year. Marty was an Air Force pilot who spent the war training other pilots, Top Gun, and later worked in munitions inspections and for Acme Manufacturing, which produced big metal storage tanks. His entrepreneurial instincts evidenced themselves quite early, and he proceeded to become quite financially successful in multiple ventures, while Lil relished her role as the traditional homemaker, doing exactly that, making a very comfortable home for her husband and her children. Marty was totally the love of her life. She and Marty were quite the team, literally holding hands until the day Marty passed in December 2014. She devoted her life to supporting him and their children, and then their children, and most recently, their children. She would not have claimed to being a religious woman, but after Marty passed, she prayed every night for the well-being of their family and to be again with Marty. She and Marty traveled the world, and very importantly, they took the whole extended family once a year on a 2-week cruise to someplace wonderful. And that started with 6 of them, and it has eventually grown to 24. And I recall teasing Cheryl and Jay, "So is this the year of deprivation?" And Marty and Lil were very generous that way. Marty's son Justin and his son-in-law Jay were in the business with him. They all worked very hard and didn't always agree, as I understand it. But nonetheless, they also played very hard together to provide an intentional, brilliant counterbalance to all the stress of work. It served to bind the extended family together, of course, as well. As Cheryl said, that's why the cousins are all so close to this very day. Lil was also very generous on her own. When Cheryl and Jay were struggling young marrieds, she would help them financially as she could by getting them a little extra food from time to time, paying for a babysitter so they could go out on Saturday nights. Very importantly, later on, paying for a babysitter on any given afternoon so she and Cheryl could go shopping. Yes, Lil loved the lifestyle that Marty's hard work afforded them. She loved her jewelry. Marty couldn't spend enough on her. I personally, and Michael, can vouch for that because we met them once on one of their shopping trips to Kelmer's, where Marty was surely buying Lil something very special. Lil also loved her furs. I was so happy that I could help Lil get her first COVID vaccine in January 2021, and we all cracked up because Lil walked into the municipal building in Vineland, New Jersey, with her walker, masked, but fully decked out in a gorgeous fur coat. Look, it was cold outside, right? It was January. And she loved people. She could chat up anyone in an elevator, and they'd be her new BFF. But only until the ride was over, because then it was back to family and close friends. She and Marty were part of a group of 8 couples who partied and traveled happily together for many years, the Ball and Chain Gang. Lil loved all animals, especially dogs and horses. Between her love of horses and Marty's keen business skills, They enjoyed many years of owning racehorses and even entering one, King Celebrity, in the Kentucky Derby in 1979, and he came in 4th there and 5th in the Belmont Stakes. Lil loved nature. In fact, apparently she was quite the plant whisperer, making things grow well beyond anyone's expectations. She also loved the warm weather and the beach, enjoying many winters with Marty in Florida, soaking up the sun. And yes, Lil was beautiful. You can see her right there with Marty, her beloved. Jay said when he first came calling on Cheryl, he took one look at Lil and he said, wow. And as it's always good to check out the mother, my father-in-law, may he rest in peace, used to say, because that's what the girl will look like one day. And of course, Cheryl does. And finally, I want to close with one more story. Lil loved her little red Mercedes convertible. I can picture her today. Unfortunately, at one point, she was in a bad accident and she broke her neck. But that didn't stop her for long. She got back on that horse, and even wearing her neck halo for 6 weeks, and she continued to drive. May her sweet memory continue to drive and inspire us all. Lillian Kaplan was a true woman of valor, an Eshet Chayil. And from Proverbs 31, we say, a good wife, who can find her? She is worth far more than rubies, and diamonds, I'll add. She brings good and not harm. All the days of her life, she girds herself with strength, and she finds her trades profitable. Wise counsel is on her tongue, and her home never suffers for warmth. She stretches her hands to the poor, reaches her arms to the needy. All her friends praise her. Her family blesses her. She's known at the gates as she sits with the elders. Dignity, honor are her garb. She smiles at the future. I was so blessed to know Lil. Ronnie, her son, Ron Kaplan, wants to speak now. Please.
I walk slow. Good morning. Yeah. Thank you for coming. It's a difficult day for funerals. Thank you. Our mom lived to be 101 years old. We remember she was a vibrant and beautiful woman who was born to immigrant parents of modest means. She lived to be old enough to have 2 rather aged children. Yeah, I wrote that. Who now stand before you. This is my eulogy to my mother, our mother, excuse me. Mom was the 19-year-old sweetheart of Marty, our dad, who together set off to conquer the world, only to be interrupted by the breakout of World War II. Their union, which lasted 73 years, tells the story of America, the struggle to emerge from poverty, to purchase a home, to raise a family, to start and fail in several businesses before success found them, to insulate their children from fear in spite of the risks. Mom was always the stabilizing force for Cheryl and me. Dad was working and often tired when he got home, but Mom was always there. She got us ready for school. She was there to serve the milk and cookies when we got home. She bought our clothes and she cooked our meals. She made sure we did our homework, most of the time. She tucked us in and kissed us goodnight at bedtime. She could be stern and she could be tender. She was the consummate and traditional stay-at-home mom with a twist. She ruled the roost. More than that, she was the roost. Dad could be rough and scary sometimes, and it's true, he brought home the bacon, but he melted into abject obedience and timidity whenever Mom rang the bell. His bluster became "Yes, Fluff," his nickname for her. It was hard to say no to my mom. My mom was not a wallflower, and those who knew her learned of her feistiness, a polite word for a characteristic that took some getting used to. It probably emanated from harder times where self-protection was tantamount to survival. People who loved her and saw her goodness understood and ignored the words and instead concentrated on the deeds, of which there were many. When my wife Jackie met my mom for the very first time, my mom's first remark to her was to advise her that her shoes were scuffed. Welcome to my world. Cheryl and I were so used to her comments that we hardly noticed them. The same was true for the many people who loved her. But those new in her life, like her wonderful caregivers, needed a course in understanding Lillian 101. And that number wasn't an accident. In order to know what to take to heart and what to ignore, including those acerbic comments she expressed from time to time. When Cheryl and I had children, Mom's world revolved around them. She doted on them, loved taking them to dinner and on vacation, played with them, bought them cars when they got older, and thought about them with every breath. And when her grandchildren started to have children of their own, well, if I can borrow a phrase from the Italian part of my family, forget about it. She experienced such joy upon simply seeing them grow and hearing their voices. Mom also learned to love my children and grandchildren I gained through Jackie. Nanny, or Nana Lil, as some called her, was loved by them in return. Through her generosity, substantial educational funds were established for every great-grandchild, all 12 of them. Regarding my mom's feistiness, from a personal point of view, as a child, it was difficult for me to understand and to deal with. And that difficulty continued through young adulthood. My attempt to imprint myself in this world often put me at loggerheads with her. And in between the loving relationship, we too often were combative with each other. There was even a 2-year period when I was in my early 30s that we did not speak at all. My father's presence, so powerful and all-encompassing, made it difficult for my mom to see me as a man in my own right. I was a distant second in every way compared to my father. So powerful did he seem that everybody believed that my mother could not survive without him. And I believed that as well. The real fact, through the years, I realized, was the truth was that my father would have fared terribly had my mother died first. He needed and counted on her that much. God knew better. My father lived almost 93 years when Dad was called back home. My mother was left alone without her life companion. A nursing home was never an option for her. My father left her with sufficient assets to live out her life wherever she chose, and she chose to stay in her Cherry Hill condominium. Because she was also almost 93 years old upon my father's death, Cheryl and I immediately tried to hire a caregiver for her, but she would not hear of that. She demanded to take care of herself. But after several episodes where somehow she was able to call me from the floor of her bedroom in the wee hours of the morning, and then I sprinted the 15 miles or so to lift her off the ground, Cheryl and I begged her to reconsider, and she finally relented. And thus began her relationship, initially with Helene, but ultimately with Suzanne, Marianne, Karen, Paula, and near the end of her life, Maureen, or as my mom chose to call her for some unknown reason, Bernadette. Because Mom liked that name. These saintly ladies took care of her as they would their own family, and Cheryl and I owe them such a deep debt of gratitude. Soon after I initially met Jackie some 24 years ago, we would have dinner with both my parents at Ponzio's every Thursday. The dinners there continued until my father's illness became so life-altering that we started to meet my parents at their condominium with food in hand. After Dad died, we continued on Thursdays with Mom, and a remarkable transformation in my relationship with my mother slowly grew out of the vacuum created by my dad's passing. With my father now gone, my mother started to see me differently, and I learned to know who she was as well. The overwhelming emotional presence of my father and the interdependence between my mom and dad had previously crippled my personal relationship with my mother for my entire life. We had never achieved the potential that was always there. Now, with our Thursday rendezvous, absent my father, we would meet. We would talk. We would laugh. We would look at pictures. We would listen to music. We would discuss family. We would discuss the past. Sometimes we would just sit and read. We would go over the bills. Until she became unable, she signed the checks I would write. Occasionally, a small dividend check would come in, and she would ask me to cash it. Once there was a check from Walmart stock in the amount of $99.45. She handed me the check and asked that I cash it and give her the money. The following week, I paid off $99 for her, but she looked at me. And she asked where the other 45 cents was. Such was her mind and memory, which remained razor sharp for her entire life. More importantly, though, she learned to trust me. She learned to see me. And I began to feel whole, as if a deep crevice that plagued me was finally being filled, like I never felt in my life. I loved my Thursdays. My whole world knew that you don't ask anything of me on Thursday between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. I was busy, perpetually. That was our time together. Of course, Mom never did stop the critical comments to Jackie about her dress, her shoes, her hair, or whatever. But you know what? When those rare Thursdays that Jackie was tied up and could not join me, when I would walk in alone, the very first thing Mom would ask was, "Where's Jackie?" It was her way of telling me how much she loved her also. Through Mom's caregivers, I learned that my mom looked forward to our Thursdays as much as I did. It would make sure her hair was done and she looked pretty for the occasion. She would call me the light of her life. She would tell me how much she loved me, and I'd tell her how much I loved her. I would touch her face. I would kiss her cheek and sit beside her and hold her hand. For 8.5 years, we met together. Our world changed with and for each other. I got an opportunity that seemed as impossible as imagining a person living to 101 years old. and I cherished every moment of it. I will continue to cherish the memory of it for the rest of my life. She died this past Wednesday. The next day, I didn't know where to go.
Wow. You know, sitting behind them, you couldn't see this, but I could. Cheryl had her arm on Ronnie's back the whole time, supporting Ronnie. She couldn't speak today. She will speak at the Shivas. But it was beautiful to watch the brother and sister that Marty and Lil produced. Thank you both. I'd like to ask Stephen Murphy, who is the oldest grandson, to come on up. Yeah, are you? Stephen, you are, right? Yeah? Come on up and share some of his thoughts.
Ron, always a tough person to follow. That was beautiful. I try to make it through this. I don't know how you didn't sob all the way through. No, I'm okay, thank you. Nanny was my grandmother. She was also my biggest fan. Her love for me and for my cousins and brother knew no bounds. It was immense and all-encompassing and unwavering. Her love was tangible. I could feel it when she looked at me. Her love shone through her bright, twinkling eyes and just filled me with joy and warmth and confidence. And I can still feel it. Even in the end, as weary as she was, her eyes still twinkled with that joy and that life, just the way that they did when I was a boy. I won't forget it. And that's saying a lot, because if you know me, you know I forget things pretty easily. I've been thinking about Nanny all week, and already Ron and a bunch of other people here have already reminded me of so many things that have slipped a little bit into the background of my mind, but Nanny's love is unforgettable and is forever etched in my heart. There are a lot of things about Nanny that I won't forget. I won't forget the cakes she so lovingly burned for me every year. Could not make a cake, but a lot of love in those cakes. I won't forget the way that she'd feed my dog a whole bagel with cream cheese and lox. And when I'd say to her, "Nanny, he's 15 pounds, what are you doing?" she would give me this face that is just like, what? It was a mix of indignation that I would call her out on it, and innocence as if she hadn't done anything all the time. This like, My mom does the same face, I just realized. I won't forget, I took her in college. I took her to see the incomparable Engelbert Humperdinck. The two of us went to a concert together, I was the only one of my friends, I think, to take his grandmother to a pop concert in my college town, just the two of us. And then a couple years ago, I found him on Cameo, and he wished her a happy, I think, 99th birthday. And she was pretty amazed that he, I guess, knew who she was. I won't ever forget the way that Nanny smelled. Her perfume throughout my childhood, which, Giorgio, I think, was that right? Whatever it was. It was a giveaway every time I walk into the house, and I know Nanny was there because the whole house would just smell like Nanny, as if the cherry red convertible wasn't enough of a hint outside. But the excitement and happiness every time I would get home and I would find her there waiting, she was just a magical presence, and it was like a magical visit every time. I won't ever forget Nanny's lovely singing voice. She had two singing voices. She had a playful singing voice that she would sing most of the time. She'd never sing the words, always la 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 la. And then she had a real voice, which she very seldom used, but when she did, look out, because it was beautiful. And, you know, Jeff said something to me earlier today that I wanted to repeat, that, you know, when Pop died, it was sudden and unexpected, and it felt like something had been taken from us. It very much did, still does. But this feels different. It feels like we have let something go, as Jeff said. And it's a much more joyful sadness. As others here have said today, a celebration. Sadness, selfish sadness, but a celebration for her. I learned that this week that Nanny and Pop, who also had a lovely singing voice, which he seldom used when he really wanted to let it out, used to sing the song Stardust to each other by Nat King Cole, which was part of the playlist that Ron was playing for her when she passed. I didn't know the song before. I don't know if any of you know the song, but I've listened to it many times this week, trying to feel connected to her, to both of them. It's a beautiful song. And now the purple dusk of twilight time steals across the meadows of my heart. High up in the sky, the little stars climb, always reminding me that we're apart. Sorry. You wander down the lane and far away, leaving me a song that will not die. Love is now the stardust of yesterday, the music of the years gone by. I listen to it and imagine them together again, young and beautiful, dancing in that purple dusk of twilight time, singing in those lovely voices, smiling, gazing into each other's eyes. So happy to finally be the stardust of yesterday together. That's all I have.
Thank you, Stephen. And now we want to hear from the oldest great-grandchild, yes? Sam Glatzer? Yeah? Good, thank you. Great-grandchild. Not a dry eye in the house.
I didn't really know what to write or say for this, and I still don't. I'm 15 years old, and Nanny was there for all of them. I have a terrible memory, so I can only remember some of those 15 years, but I'm going to try to recall some of them. One of the first things that comes to mind when I remember when I was younger, we would have Skype calls with Nanny and Papa. I remember talking to them about school and what was going on with my life. I also recall them sending dollar bills through the computer, and that left a major impression on me, even though now I know what the magic was. I have seen many photos of my childhood, and I get to see a lot of pictures from when Nanny and Papa would come down to my birthday parties. It would add on to those special days. One funny thing when I think of Nanny is how she overfed Captain whenever she was around him. He will most definitely be missing the 3 pounds of blueberries he would have received any time he saw her. The first time Nanny met Taz, my dog, she called him ugly. Now, I wouldn't have disagreed with that at the time, as he got all of his hair buzzed off. Taz probably would have loved the excess amount of food he would have received. One of my favorite things about going to Nanny's, other than seeing her, was the clock that went off every hour. I would sit in front of the clock and wait until it went off. The candy she had also added to the fun. Another thing I remember from Nanny was the 200 flowers she had on her deck. It was like a jungle out there. My mom told me out of all the flower pots we made for her 101st birthday, mine was her favorite. The day I found out that Nanny's amazing life was coming to an end was a sad day for me. But I knew that she lived an amazing life, and I wanted to see pop up again. I will always love Nanny for the rest of my life, and I wish I got more very wet kisses. I know Nanny will be up in the stars, watching me as my life goes on, and the good thing is I will see her again someday in the future.
So beautiful. He really did know what to say. And our closing eulogy will be from Sam's mom, Jacqueline Glatzer.
Nanny, like Cher, Madonna, Barbie, she only needed one name. Those that know me know I am rarely at a loss for words. More so, I'm even more rarely at a loss for a fitting tribute. But upon learning news that Nanny had become more tired and hospice had been called, and realizing that in a very short time I would be standing in front of all of you, I have truly struggled to figure out what to say here today, how to perfectly honor a woman so critical in my life and the lives of so many. I thought about sharing her qualities, a long list of adjectives that would have you all nodding in agreement: vibrant, unwavering, colorful, beautiful, strong, funny, direct, wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, glamorous, brave, tenacious, witty, willful, giving, sharp as a tack, sassy, spunky, resilient, and loved. So loved. This was Nanny. This is Nanny. I thought about sharing some of my memories, especially those that have flooded my brain this last week. Memories I didn't even realize were still there. A life with a grandmother who only had love for her grandkids, and eventually great-grandkids. Adoration, support, generosity, and presence. Playing Barbies in her Chanticleer living room, wet kisses, and sing-songy la-la-la tunes. A purse always stacked with jewels. Vacations around the world, her presence at the births of both of my kids, all the way in Atlanta, picking out the annual special bauble from the jewelry counter at Concord. Drinking milkshakes at Holly Ravine before we fed the livestock, shopping at the flea market, dinners at Ponzio's, and burnt chocolate cake. Seems like we have a lot of the same memories. The recognizable smell of her Florida home at Palmair, feeding the racehorses carrots at the stable, the swish of her colorful tracksuits, her voice. When Pop-Up passed in 2014, I remember sitting Shiva at Cheryl's. Nanny was obviously in despair. I took an opportunity to sit with her on the couch. She told me she wanted to go too. I asked her, begged her to stay with us. I told her we were not ready for that. She nodded, and she gave us 8 more years. She gave us everything she had, and then a bit more, and it would have been selfish to ask her to keep staying. In those 8 years, she got 7 more great-grandchildren, and I got to treasure every moment by her side. There's a grief, but there's also a peace. And to quote my friend, Michael Kratchman, what a reunion she and Pop-Up had. I thought about standing up here and simply saying thank you, Nanny, for being my biggest cheerleader. And no doubt the biggest cheerleader of so many of you here, for supporting my Girl Scout cookie sales by asking all of your friends to buy, for always greeting me with the biggest smile when I walked in the room like I was the most important person in your world. Thank you for facilitating my appreciation for diamonds. Thank you for always treating me and my college entourage for the most elaborate dinners when you came to visit, for always being up for a selfie, for showing up for all of my kids' birthday parties as you could until you could no longer physically make the trip. Thank you for always asking me about my businesses, for fostering my love of travel, my belief in myself, my strong desire to give, and my security in life. I believe you chose to leave us when you did so that you could be with me in Texas on Thursday when I made my big presentation. I think we made the sale, but you already know that. In honor of her 99th birthday, the family, even the dogs, gathered the 99 things we love most about her. I won't share all 99 here today, but I thought these few would help represent those family members not speaking today and demonstrate the depth of our feelings for this amazing woman. I love all your toys. I love all the fun we have as a family during Hanukkah. I love all the pretty animals on your pajamas. I love and cherish the memories of telling you about the big events in our lives and your joyful reactions. I love how you light up around family. I love how you speak your mind. I love our Thursdays together. I love the honey bells you send every year from Florida. I love that you think I can eat people food. I love the sound of your voice, especially when you realize it's me on the phone. I love sitting on the couch and simply holding your hand. These were in honor of 99. At 100, I added one more. I love that you are mine. And I have always been so proud to be your granddaughter. I love you to the moon and back again. When Nanny turned 100, I did a quick Google search to learn only a fraction of a percent of people are 100 or older. Out of the 7.8 billion people in the world, only about 0.004%. If you were born in 1922 as a female, your odds of living to 100 were just 2.3%. But to me, she was 1 in a million. But with all these thoughts, I kept coming back to my absolute favorite Nanny story. And so I've decided to share that story here today because I think it so absolutely depicts her. I learned this story through my father, who writes me weekly answers to questions I pose about his life. This particular question was about the family history of horse racing. I'll spare you the entirety of the story and jump right to the epilogue. At the end of my grandparents' horse career, they sold all of their horses to various entities, to the police, to farms, as pets, and as riding academy horses. Of note, there was one particular mare Nanny loved, called Breath of the East. One day, years after Breath of the East was sold to a farm, my grandparents decided to visit her. Out in the pasture were over a dozen horses grazing and enjoying life. Nanny could not tell where Breath of the East was, but brought a carrot just in case. In her soft and high-pitched voice, she rang out to the throng of horses, "Breath of the East!" All of a sudden, one of the mare's ears perked up, and she broke away from the grazing horses and trotted toward the sound of Nanny's voice. Breath and Nanny recognized each other. Quite amazing. The reunion earned Breath a carrot and gave us this beautiful story about Nanny that I cherish. Nanny, I promise to always make you proud, to always do as you and Pop-Up taught me, to love my own grandkids like you loved me, to give, to do life my way like you did life your way, and to always show up, Nanny ready. Nanny called me her baby girl, and I will always and forever be that.
Thank you for all of those kind and meaningful and beautiful stories and words that were shared. I'll let everyone have those very important hugs. And in a moment, we will rise as we are able for El Male Rachamim, a prayer of comfort and compassion for Lil, for Nanny, to help send her on her way. And so I ask that all of those who are able to rise, to please rise as you are able for El Male Rachamim. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamtzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Im Kedoshim Utehurim, Kezohar Rakia, Mazirim, Et Nishmat Ilka Bat Nathan V'Jenny Shel Halcha Le'olama, Bal HaRachamim Yastireha B'Seita Kenafav Le'olami, V'yitzurur, V'yitzurur HaChaim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava, V'nomar Amen. You may be seated.
And in English, compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Lil, daughter of Nate and Jenny, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Amen. Thank you for participating here today. Thank you, Lauren, for lending your voice and your spirit and your whole being and your love for Lil, which was great, we know, today. Please join us at Locust Wood Cemetery for the continuation and completion of our service. There will be Shiva observed at 42 Old Mill Road Drive in Voorhees tonight and Monday night at 6 p.m. The family requests that you bring your favorite stories about Lil so we can continue to share the beautiful memories from those of us who were so blessed to know her.